Alright folks, so what we have here is a cold steel hideout neck knife. We're going to take a look at this, we're going to talk a little bit about its construction and do a spec rundown. But before we do that, why don't you go grab yourself a cold one, come on back and we'll get started. Alright, so hopefully everybody made it back. Here's the knife outside of the box. It really wasn't in there in the first place. I took it out and I put this paracord neck lanyard on there, and I realized that that's dangerous. Let's take a look at the box real quick. Here it is, Cold Steel Hideout. Product number is 49 NDE, and Hideout is what it's called there. Sorry, I'm getting a little choked up. I promised I wouldn't cry, but I just might. It comes with this ball and chain that I guess it's called a ball chain necklace that you can use to put it around your neck, and it's a little bit more safe. It can break. I hate these, so we're not going to use that. We're going to use the paracord like I talked about. Let's go ahead and let's get this knife out of the sheath. What you can see is it's a dagger construction, very pointy at the tip and sharpened on both sides. This is a Secure-Ex sheath, which I believe is just some kind of plasticky Kydex that Cold Steel does. It does a great job with retention. It's very comfortable and lightweight. Cold Steel always does a good job with their Secure-Ex sheaths, in my opinion anyway. I'm sure somebody out there has got a big experience. So I want to talk a little bit about this knife. The knife by itself weighs 1.9 ounces, so it's very light. It's very easy to carry around your neck, and it's not heavy. That doesn't include the blade, the weight of the sheath. Cold Steel is claiming this is a 3-inch blade, so when I put it here and I measure it out, you know, we got 1, 2, 3. It comes right to 3 inches, but you lose a little bit more than a half of an inch with this hilt area that you have there. So it's not really 3-inch cutting surface. And this is more of a poker, not a cutter. I mean, you can cut with it. I have using it. I've been carrying it around for about a week. It comes razor sharp out of the box. It's they did a really good job on it. There is no. Let's see if I can get some zoom action on this thing. There is no secondary bevel there, so it's kind of like a Scandi grind. You can sharpen it and put a secondary bevel or micro bevel on there, but I would advise against that. Let's go ahead and zoom back out. Alright, this has got a 6.5-inch overall length, and the blade is 3 millimeters thick, which leads it to be very strong. Like, it's not very bendy. You know, put it down like that. It doesn't flex. It doesn't give. So it has appropriate thickness and appropriate construction, in my opinion. The handle is called Griv-Ex, and it's kind of like a mushy, rubbery handle, but it's very hard and feels durable. But if you're out there banging on this with a hammer or baton or anything like that, and you hit this handle, you are going to damage it. It is not that strongly constructed. Let's see if I can lighten this up a little bit there. Sorry about that, guys. And handle itself is 3.5 inches. Blade steel is AUS 8A, and so I wanted to talk about that a little bit. There seems to be a lot of controversy, and I am not a metallurgist, and I'm not an expert on blade steel, but I will talk about it a little bit. A lot of people are like, AUS 8 and AUS 8A are the exact same thing. Well, that's true, but it's not entirely true. The A at the end of AUS 8A means that the steel has been annealed before it has been rolled into bars. So typically when you make steel, you have like blocks of steel, and then what they'll do is they'll mash it down and they'll roll it out flat into bars, and they'll cut these bars into certain sizes, and they'll send them out to knife manufacturers. What they do in the case of this AUS 8A is they heat it up to soften it a little bit before they send it to knife manufacturers. Now, a knife manufacturer will get these blanks, they'll water jet them out, they'll grind them down, and then they'll harden them. So this annealing process happens before it's hardened. A lot of people will be like, this knife's a little bit dirty from using it earlier. A lot of people will be like, oh, AUS 8 sucks, I hate it, bear. So I want to talk a little bit about it. And it is very comparable to the 440 steels that we use here in the United States. As a matter of fact, a lot of people will say it's the Japanese version of 440A. And I believe that to be true, but let's talk about what 440 is before we start saying how AUS 8 sucks. So carbon steel is steel that has carbon in it, right? Or has iron that has carbon in it. And 440 and AUS 8, they have 0.75% carbon, which makes them akin to a carbon steel like 1075. So what's funny is you'll hear people say how they can't use 440, they can't use AUS 8, but then they go on and say how they have a 1075 carbon steel blade is the best thing in the world. What they do with this carbon steel is they add chromium, and it has to be, and this is debatable, it has to be more than 13. This is pretty comfortable in the hand. I mean, this isn't an ergonomic handle. I'm just kind of jumping all around because I probably drank a lot of caffeine. But I think it's generally accepted that it has to have 13% or greater chromium content to be considered stainless. So essentially, this 440 and also 8 is stainless carbon steel because it's carbon steel that had chromium added to it, right? Does that make sense? So when you have 440 steel and you add vanadium, I can't say it right, you get also 8A, so the Japanese sprinkle a little vanadium in there. And what that does is it refines the grain structure in the steel. 440A typically doesn't have much grain structure, and that grain structure is like putting sand in concrete. And what that does is there's little pieces of grain in there. I can't remember the word that they use for it. You have to give me a few seconds. What that does is it increases your edge retention or wear resistance because it adds particles to the steel that are harder than the hardness of the steel itself. So you might have a Rockwell hardness on this thing at about 56%. The particles of vanadium in there are harder than that, and as a result, they give you more edge retention, abrasion resistance, and wear resistance. I hope that's making sense to everybody. So when you talk about steel, it's typically characterized or graded in four different cases. You have hardness, which is your Rockwell. All that is how hard you can push a diamond point into the steel, and you get a value at a certain hardness. And then you have the strength of the knife, and strength really is the ability of the steel to not deform under load. So as I push this down, it's not bending. Now, if it would bend like a spoon out of your kitchen drawer, again, that's not very hard steel. Toughness is resistance against chips, breaks, and cracks. And I'm not talking about microchips on the edge. I'm talking about when you're using your steel and you're whacking something, you get a huge chunk of steel breaking off, like a huge chip in a blade. That's a chip. That's a measure of toughness. And then the last thing is wear resistance or abrasion resistance. That's the ability to hold an edge. And like I said, those smaller particles of that vanadium in there give this a little bit better edge retention. Now, the fact that this knife is made of steel that is a little bit softer, like a 1075, let's see if we can get a little zoom action on there, it's very easy to sharpen. You can sharpen these up super sharp, and you can do it super fast. And that's why things like stropping these knives and using them on things like Spyderco sharp makers will really allow you to get a pretty good edge. All right, this video is much longer than I wanted. What I am saying is I got this knife for about $22 shipped to my house off of Amazon Prime. It's very lightweight, comfortable. I can wear it around my neck. This isn't a cooking knife. This isn't a bushcraft knife. It isn't an EDC. Well, maybe it is an EDC knife, but really what this is a kind of last resort emergency type blade. So like if you were, say, at like the roller rink and then you needed to cut up some pizza or some funnel cake or something like that, you'd be able to use this. I'm just kind of joking, but this is really more of like a defensive, get off me, stay away from me type of knife or blade. I really don't think that this is the kind of thing that I would be carrying around and using to do a lot of things like opening packages and stuff like that, or just regular EDC type tasks. I think it's more of a defensive type knife. Anyhow, that being said, I really like it. I've carried it around for about a week now. I've done all kinds of things with it that I shouldn't have done. Like I used it to open up a hamburger meat today. So anyhow, that's it. I like it. I love it. It's a great little knife.